What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I'm kicking off this weekend of videos with yet another CD collection update. We're only one update away from 50 update videos. Ever since I started doing this collection update stuff at the end of 2021 into 2022, and we're already almost to 50. So this update actually is kind of a surprisingly smaller update. This is pretty much going to be all the things that I got while I was on my big almost 2-week vacation back last month to the Gulf Shores of Alabama and places in between. Yeah, I didn't really get a whole lot this time around, mainly because I didn't want to go absolutely insane, because I knew with Christmas coming up and Black Friday sales were coming up, I had to kind of pace myself a little bit, which, spoiler alert, the next update coming will more than likely be the stuff that I got off of Black Friday sales, which, trust me, you're going to want to tune in for that update. It's going to be big. But regardless, so yeah, I have, well, I actually didn't really count these. I have 12? Yeah, I got 12 CDs right here that I wanted to show off. I believe I got 12. Let me double check. Yeah, 12. 12 albums that I got. Well, I actually got more than that, but I took a couple out because they're albums I've already reviewed on this channel or talked about in the past. So without further ado, let's get started. First, we have a pair from Children of Bodom. We have their second album, Hatebreeder, and then this one, I want to say, is their 7th album, Halo of Blood. And, well, these are two vastly different periods in Children of Bodom's history. With Hatebreeder, this came out in 1998, and yeah, this album certainly made a big splash in Finland. Of course, Children of Bodom, I think everybody should know who Children of Bodom are. I mean, they're one of the most legendary melodic death metal / power metal bands of all time. And, well, with Hatebreeder, not only do you have the title track, but also, like, Silent Night, Bodom Night's really cool. The song Children of Bodom, but definitely the song that I think put them on the map is the closer, Downfall. At least on the standard edition. This actually does come with a couple of bonus tracks. We have, and they're actually both cover songs. You have No Commands, which was a song originally done by the band Stone, and Iron Maiden's Ace is High. Pretty good, solid covers, but it's mainly the originals that I love, especially Downfall, like that, when it goes right into the big double bass and wailing guitars and keyboards, it's just like, wow, consider me floored when it comes to Alexi Laiho's awesome guitar work, and he's sorely missed. But yeah, Hatebreeder, really damn good shit right here. And then with Halo of Blood, this came out in 2013, and, well, this album was considered by many to be like the big comeback album for Children of Bodom, because after Hate Crew Death Roll, their sound really kind of shifted away from what they were truly known for, and that was by mixing mellow death with some power metal moments, where they went more towards like a mellow death / thrash metal sound, which worked for what those albums were, but I felt like they were missing some of the magic of the early stuff. This album, I think, is a pretty good balance of pretty much everything Children of Bodom ever did, and I'll be honest with you, this, in my opinion, was like the last great Children of Bodom album, because then after this, the couple albums that followed before the band broke up and all that, I don't think were the best, but Halo of Blood I thought was pretty killer. The title track, Bodom Blue Moon, Days Are Numbered, Dead Man's Hand on You, some really cool stuff, like I said, that pretty much perfectly encapsulates everything about Children of Bodom, from like the blackened feels, the mellow death, the thrashiness, the power metal, all combined into one. So yeah, R.I.P. Alexi and R.I.P. COB. But keeping up with Finland, next we have Ensiferum, One Man Army. This album came out in 2015, and, well, I've been needing to get some Ensiferum in my collection, especially now after listening to the new album, which spoiler alert, it's going to be on my year-end list. But this album is actually really, really cool as well. Like, you got some awesome tracks on here like March of War, Acts of Judgment, Heathen Horde, Warrior Without a War, Two of Spades. It's like, Two of Spades, is that supposed to be like some kind of poker reference that they're going for? But regardless. And then, of course, this actually comes with a second disc that contains some bonus tracks, primarily like 2 bonuses, or actually 3 bonus tracks, and then 4 extra songs. So it's like, yeah, you get a whole second disc of 7 more tracks, which I think is pretty cool. So it doubles this album up to 15 songs altogether. So you just get more magical stuff from these mellow death folk metal pioneers from Finland. So yeah, if you love, you know, folk metal and melodic death metal with even a little hint of power metal, definitely check out some more Ensiferum and check this album out too, because this is pretty good. Next up, we have Evergrey, The Atlantic. I actually remember checking this album out when it came out in 2019. I actually didn't get to review it. I actually listened to it kind of on an off day from doing reviews. But I really, really loved this album. And yeah, Evergrey, of course, they're legendary Swedish progressive metal, borderline power metal band. Of course, I've gone over their last few albums, and they've been still really fucking good. But I think out of the last 5 years, this, in my opinion, is the best of their run of the last 5 years, because, you know, so many great songwriting dynamics, and I just love, you know, Tom England's vocals and guitar work. I think he's actually a really underrated guitarist. But the song that really kind of brought me into Evergrey, because I got into these guys with this album. I still haven't gone back to their older catalog from behind this album, but the one song that definitely got me into being an Evergrey fan is on this album, the song All I Have. Sounded like they were channeling a little bit of Mastodon on that song with like the dissonant melodies and some of the rhythms. Overall, it's just a fun album. If you love proggy power metal or power metal inspired prog, definitely check this out. Next up, we have Fear Factory, Archetype. This is, I want to say, 5th album overall from these industrial metal legends. I've been needing to get more Fear Factory. I mean, I already got quite a few Fear Factory albums. Like, I have Soul of a New Machine, Demanufacture, Obsolete, Genexus, and the last one, Aggression Continuum, I think was what it was called. But I was wanting to get this album, particularly for the song Cyber Waste. That's one of my favorite Fear Factory songs of all time. It's just so thrashy and brutal and just so riddled with hatred. And I absolutely love it. But you also do have other killer tracks on here like Slave Labor, Corporate Cloning, Default Judgment, Bone Scraper, Ascension, Bite the Hand That Bleeds. And if I recall, this was also the last album with Raymond Herrera on drums, and then after this, I believe, was when Gene Hoglan joined, and then goes on from there. I'd have to go back through my Fear Factory history, but regardless, this album's still pretty freaking killer. And also, what's cool about this particular version, which I just found at a random rinky-dink record shop in, I can't remember if it was Kentucky or Tennessee, on the way down. But what was cool about having this version is that it comes with a DVD documentary making of the album, which I actually might watch pretty soon, because I love watching making of albums documentaries because they're just so fun to explore. But yeah, if you love Fear Factory, chances are you probably already own this, but if you want to get more Fear Factory, this is another good one to get. Next up, we have Gorephilia, Ascend to Chaos. If I recall, this is the debut EP from this Finnish death metal band. Man, a lot of Finland representation in this update. But I didn't expect to find this at one of the shops, so I actually, towards the end of the trip, went over west, or not west, what am I talking about? I went an hour east of where I was staying. I went over to Pensacola, Florida, and found one record shop, and they had plenty of good stuff. However, I didn't go absolutely ham, but I was not expecting to find anything beyond like mainstream stuff. But I found this in their death metal section, which I will say in their main rock section, there was still plenty of death metal albums that could have been shifted over to the one little shelf of death metal albums. But I looked over there and I found this. I'm like, well, I do like Gorephilia, so I figured I'd get this, and this is a brutal EP. I mean, Death, Chaos, Doom, Reaching, The Divine End, the title track, just all 5, I guess if you want to say the intro counts as a track, 6 songs on this EP is just absolutely masterful. And I actually need to get the rest of the Gorephilia catalog, because basically, if you love Morbid Angel, you probably will love Gorephilia. So, yeah, definitely check out their stuff, but also, yeah, this EP is pretty fucking killer. Next up we have Grave, Soulless. This is the 3rd album from this legendary Swedish death metal or death thrash band, depending on your viewpoint about them. But yeah, this is the 3rd album, and this came out in 1994, so this was just before their kind of dark period in the mid to late 90s, and this was following up on their first 2 classics, Into the Grave and You'll Never See. I know this is considered a bit of a drop-off for Grave in their catalog, but I still think it's a pretty good album. It's just maybe not in comparison to the first 2 albums, but it's still got some pretty killer tracks on here. The title track, Bullets Are Mine, Bloodshed, Judas, Genocide, Scars. And also this album cover, it's almost like they took that like demon image from the first Deicide album and like altered it with what looks like face eating like hands and fingers or whatever the fuck, or they're just growing out of his head, I don't know. But still a pretty good album, but yeah, definitely a drop off from the first 2. Next up we have Meshuggah, Koloss, not Colossus, Koloss. But yeah, this one, because I keep gradually getting into more and more Meshuggah, and I figured, well, I saw this and it was in the used bin, and it actually looks in fairly good shape for a used copy, and it was like under $10, so I'm like, well, I'll get it while I can, and actually this is not half bad. Granted, if I were to do a Meshuggah ranking, this would probably rank towards the bottom, but it's still good. Like, you got some good songs like I Am Colossus, Marrow, Swarm, The Last Vigil. Yeah, there are some really good songs on here. It's just perhaps, you know, nothing quite as memorable as, say, the album prior to this, Obsen, or Destroy, Erase, Improve, or Chaos Sphere, or even, in my opinion, like Contradictions, Collapse, and None. Like I said, if I were to rank Meshuggah, this album would probably be towards the bottom, not at the very bottom. But again, doesn't mean it's bad. It's actually still pretty good. It's Meshuggah, you know? And I never thought I'd give a ton of praise to Meshuggah, considering for a long time I wasn't the biggest Meshuggah fan until actually finally diving headfirst into a majority of their stuff. Now I can appreciate and love it for what it is, even if I'm not the world's biggest fan of 8-string guitars. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. And actually this comes with a bonus DVD of making of the album and the band hanging out in India, which I might watch that eventually too. But yeah, Meshuggah. Alright, we're getting close to the end. Next up we have My Dying Bride, The Light at the End of the World. This one came out in 1999, and of course they were still on Peaceville at the time. And yeah, this was a pretty big album for My Dying Bride because, well, I'll say the one song I remember the most off of this album would be the opening track, She Is the Dark, particularly the live version. I actually think I like the live version a little bit more than the version on the album, but it remains one of My Dying Bride's best songs. But also The Night He Died, The Light at the End of the World, the title track, Into the Lake of Ghosts, Sear Me 3. It's like that Sear Me series just kept getting sadder and sadder and sadder every single time they did one of them Sear Me tracks, because you had the original Sear Me, I believe, on the debut as The Flowers Wither, but still really great death doom, gothic metal, however you want to describe My Dying Bride, or just one word, sad. That's pretty much all you need to know. But yeah, I'm happy that I'm getting more My Dying Bride into the collection. I still need to dive even more heads on into their stuff. But I'm glad I found this and definitely have something to look forward to. Next up, we have Porcupine Tree in Absentia. This came out in 2002, and this is, I don't know how many albums in this was. I want to say maybe 5 or 6. From this legendary British progressive rock band. Now, of course, I'm a pretty big fan of Steven Wilson, just with him existing, because he is super talented, amazing producer, songwriter, musician, singer. Like, yeah, I mean, granted, I need to listen to more of his solo stuff, because I know from what I've heard, it's absolutely incredible. But Porcupine Tree is really where I get to know more about Steven Wilson. Like, I already had Fear of a Blank Planet, which is a fantastic album that came out 5 years after this. But this album was definitely a giant shift in Porcupine Tree's sound, because before this, you could just say they were just straight up progressive rock, alternative rock even. You know, kind of like mixing classic prog with maybe a little bit of like that 90s alternative sound. But this album, like I said, was the big shift in their sound, because for those who don't know or forgotten, when this album was released, this was over a year after Steven Wilson worked with Opeth on Blackwater Park doing the production, and then around the same time of doing this album, he was producing Opeth's Deliverance and Damnation at the same time. And it was not only because of the influence of Opeth, but also Steven getting into bands like Meshuggah and the Dillinger Escape Plan, Dream Theater, among many other prog metal bands or bands within that realm. And it kind of inspired Steven to go into more of a progressive metal sound. I would still describe this album as like progressive rock, but there's plenty of metal moments, like heavier riffs, more syncopation on some of the rhythms. But yeah, tracks like Blackest Eyes, Lips of Ashes, Wedding Nails, just some really cool songs. And this was, like I said, pushing more towards a heavier direction, which you kind of notice that whenever with both Opeth and Porcupine Tree, after Steven worked with Opeth gradually was starting to get a little more melodic throughout the 2000s, but also Porcupine Tree started to get a little heavier throughout the 2000s. So it's like this interesting contrast parallel between both bands as a result of working together for a couple of years. But yeah, I also still need to get like Deadwing and The Incident, and then check out more of the classic 90s era Porcupine Tree stuff. Hell, even the new album I thought was really good too. But yeah, good old Porcupine Tree. Alright, next up we have Ritual Carnage, Infidel. This is the final album from this Japanese/American thrash/death thrash band. It's hard to describe, but thrash is still like the main thing for them. It's just sometimes it can border on death thrash or even blackened thrash. But I remember first hearing about these guys courtesy of a YouTube compilation and heard some snippets of songs, and I thought, damn, these guys sound brutal. And when I saw a Ritual Carnage album in that same shop in, I think it was Kentucky, where I got the Fear Factory album from, I was thinking, it might be something pretty cool. And it's not the best thing I've ever heard, but it's certainly not the worst. It's actually decent. It's decent, though, is all I'll give it. I mean, there are some cool tracks on here, like The Perfect Strain, the title track, Do Not Resuscitate, I Am War. Like, it's still got a lot of thrash to it, but I don't think it's anything special. But does it have to be special? Perhaps not. But I was just happy that I got me a Ritual Carnage album, but I need to go back and get their, I want to say it was their first album that came out in 98, because that was where I first heard about them, was a song off of that album. But yeah, Ritual Carnage, if you dig them, then you probably will dig this. And then finally, we have Soundgarden, Louder Than Love. This is the second album from the Seattle Legends, alternative metal, grunge, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, I was needing to get this album for a long time, and I don't understand why this album gets not as much love, no pun intended, as some other Soundgarden albums. Yeah, after this you had the two big giant albums, Bad Motorfinger and Super Unknown, but I think this album set the tone for those two albums. It was a little more raw, it was a little chunkified, a little heavier, because like their first album, certainly not the best start for them, but it's still solid. This is where Soundgarden truly became Soundgarden, particularly on two songs, Loud Love and Gun. Awesome riffs that kind of have a bit of that like Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin kind of swagger to it, but with a more late 80s sound, like production-wise. After all, this was Terry Date doing the production, which again, 1989, Terry Date was a busy motherfucker. He was working with Dream Theater, Overkill, just beginning to work with Pantera by the end of the year, heading into 90, and then this. It's like, Terry Date was busy in 1989 into 1990. But yeah, this is an awesome album. I'm pretty sure most of you guys know about this album. If you're not familiar with it, check it out, especially for Loud Love and Gun. Those two songs are mwah, awesome. And that, ladies and gentlemen, knocks out yet another collection update. So, yeah, like I said, it was a smaller one, but we're coming up on episode update number 50, which that will more likely not be coming out until maybe the end of the year, depending on when one of the packages that I ordered gets here, because it's not been shipped yet as of recording. One package is almost here, but the other one I'm still waiting on word. But anyways, what was your guys' favorite album out of this stack for you today? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, as we're getting close to the end of the year. And, well, I got my year-end list to work on. I also got the Immortal ranking to do, as well as a couple of thread videos. And, of course, New Year's Eve being the most anticipated albums of 2025 video. So I still got plenty to work on. But until then, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.